Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. This weekend we had yet another one of these mass shootings here in America perpetrated by one of these beta males. Now, your Dakota Thoro was a 21-year-old man who lived in Louisiana, and he participated in a mass shooting where he murdered not only his mother and father, but his girlfriend and several of her friends. Now, this Dakota Thoro was a known problem in the community, and he was having serious issues with his father, which clearly showed me that he had an issue with male authority and male authority figures. And this is something I talk about in depth in my book, The Man Crisis, which details how these beta males operate and what motivates them to participate in the spectrum of violent behaviors they participate in, like these mass shootings. And when I take a critical look at this Dakota Thoro from what I've read in articles, I see another textbook beta male like I described in The Man Crisis. Now, what many people believe is that most of these beta males come from single mother households. And yes, most of the beta males do come from single mother households. But on occasion, you may have one of these beta males come from a household with a father in it. And when I look at Dakota Thoro's pattern, he had 4 brothers, and it looks like he was one of those boys who had a hard time with male authority, and he had a hard time with male authority figures like his father, because they said he had serious issues with his father, and that is a textbook pattern of a beta male, because beta males usually they have a hard time with male authority and male authority figures. And this Dakota Thoro, they said he oftentimes led and clinged more to his mother, which is another textbook pattern of beta males, because beta males want to submit to female authority and female authority figures because they see females as the ones having the power. And in some cases, they wind up resenting the man because the man is the leader and the authority figure, and they don't like that man having power over them. Now, I believe that this Dakota Thoro, he had serious issues as related to male authority and male authority figures, and I believe that might have been one of the reasons why he was having this drug addiction. Now, addiction is another part of the beta male behavior, because when it comes down to beta males, they have a hard time coping with life, and they have a hard time coping with situations that they can't have control over, so they wind up taking drugs to escape. And when I look at your Dakota Thoro, he did what beta males do, and that is they either get addicted to drugs or they usually get addicted to other things. And what they want to do with these addictions is escape their problems and escape their lives and the problems in their lives, because they don't know how to solve the problems themselves. So whenever you have one of these beta males, drug addiction is something that the beta male will participate in if they feel frustrated and completely overwhelmed by a life situation. And that only exacerbated your Dakota Thoro situation, because here you have this young man who is on these drugs. He's probably arguing back and forth with his parents, and he's feeling more and more powerless. And this powerlessness is what's leading to him simmering and boiling in anger. And then eventually this man wound up exploding in the rage that he was in. Because when it comes down to the beta males, they are often extremely angry about things for years. And they are extremely angry about things because when it comes down to the beta male, they often don't have good coping skills. They don't know how to navigate through their emotions. They don't know how to problem solve. And these things are the things that lead to these beta males eventually winding up simmering and boiling in anger, and then eventually winding up exploding in this rage. And then as they explode in this rage, they wind up participating in a spectrum of violent behaviors. And we saw this when, as I read in the articles, this spectrum of violent behaviors had been escalating for years with this Dakota Thoro. His anger had been escalating for years, and then he just eventually just wound up participating in this mass shooting because he wanted to destroy the lives of all those around him because he felt like his life was being destroyed. And this is a pattern as it relates to these beta males, but most people don't want to talk about that pattern as related to these beta males, because if we have to talk about this pattern as related to these beta males, oftentimes we have to start looking at the way we are raising children, especially the way children are being raised in many of these households that are primarily run by female authority figures. And because we live in a gynocentric society, most people don't want to take that look at these mothers and the way they are raising their sons, how they are coddling them, how they are sheltering them, and how they are preventing them from learning the male life skills they're going to need to survive in the world. And it's clear to me from your Dakota Thoro that he just didn't get the male survival skills that he needed, in the same way the other young man in Florida just didn't get the male survival skills he needed. And this is a pattern that has been going on as related to these American men out here and these Western men out here, that because they are growing up primarily in homes where they have these too close attachments to their mothers, they're not learning how to go out here and deal with this thing we call life. And when I look at Dakota Thoro, he's another one of these beta males who just did not have the coping skills or the survival skills. And this is what led to him simmering and boiling in anger and then trying to escape through drugs, and then eventually his addiction and wound up clouding his judgment, and then he wound up participating in this mass shooting. But these mass shootings, as I've said before, they are going to continue on the uprise, because when it comes down to Americans, we don't want to acknowledge that there's a man crisis here in America. And because we are not raising boys to become healthy men, they are taking on this actual toxic masculinity, and this toxic masculinity that is learned in single mother households, and households where boys have too close attachments to their mothers, or households with beta male fathers. These boys are turning into these beta males, and these beta males, they are simmering, boiling in anger, and they are ticking time bombs all across this country. And what's scary about these beta males is that we don't know when these guys are going to go off or what damage they will do to the lives of those around them when they go off. And in New Orleans, your Dakota Thoro did major damage to the lives of not only his mother and his father, but to the lives of his girlfriends, family, and the family friends who lost their lives, all because this young man just did not know how to survive in the world as a man, did not get the male life skills he needed, did not get the survival skills he needed, did not get the coping skills he needed. And he tried to cope through drugs, but those drugs couldn't only, he tried to use to medicate his pain, only wound up exacerbating things. And this is a big problem here in America, because we don't want to deal with this man crisis. And this man crisis is only getting worse, because we look at it last week. We had 2 shootings literally back to back from each other, all because we had 2 beta males who didn't know how to deal with this thing called life. And what's even scarier than those 2 nearly back-to-back shootings is that we have millions of these ticking time bombs out here, and we have millions of these ticking time bombs because there are so many boys out here who are not being raised in a way where they are learning about healthy masculinity, a value to being a man in society, or learning the natural male life skills that they're going to need to survive. And because they are not learning these natural male life skills and survival skills, they are not able to cope out here. They are not able to deal with this thing we call life. And they're just completely malfunctioning and falling completely apart all over this country and in places like the Europe. And that's why we are seeing this escalation in mass shootings. And we're going to sadly see a continued escalation in these mass shootings because America doesn't want to acknowledge the man crisis. They don't want to acknowledge what is causing the man crisis. And what's causing the man crisis is the way women are raising boys to become men. And as those boys are learning these female life skills, they are falling completely apart and they are not able to go out here and be healthy, functional men. When I look at Dakota Thoro, he is another textbook beta male from the man crisis that's going on here in America, a crisis no one wants to talk about because when it comes down to these dysfunctional men, most women don't want to acknowledge their part in the man crisis and how they raise their boys to become extremely dysfunctional males who never learn what they need to become a man. If you'd like to learn more about why these men like your Dakota Thoro and many others participate in things like mass shootings, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and ebook today. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.